1829 was a year defined by the transfer of power and the formal dissolution of old political alliances, actions which generated lasting negative consequences for the United States. Andrew Jackson's inauguration in March, following his bitter victory over John Quincy Adams in the 1828 election, set the stage for major conflict. Jackson and his newly established Democratic Party immediately introduced the practice of rotation in office, which was quickly dubbed the spoils system. The negative consequence of this was the replacement of experienced, nonpartisan government officials with Jackson's political allies. This move essentially established political loyalty as the primary qualification for federal jobs, leading to increased administrative corruption, inefficiency, and the degradation of the professional civil service, most notoriously exemplified by the later embezzlement scandal involving Jackson appointee Samuel Swartwout. For Andrew Jackson and the Democrats, the year also marked the start of a policy that would inflict immense suffering. Though the Indian Removal Act was passed the following year, Jackson used his first annual message to Congress in December 1829 to articulate his firm support for the relocation of Native American tribes. This action committed the power of the new administration to the forced displacement of tens of thousands of Native Americans from their ancestral lands, a policy that led directly to the tragic Trail of Tears and the widespread loss of life, land, and sovereignty for the Cherokee, Muskogee, Creek, Seminole, Chickasaw, and Choctaw nations. Furthermore, Jackson and the dominant Southern faction of the Democratic Party were staunch defenders of slavery, which served to politically entrench and protect the institution that was already creating a permanent moral and economic chasm in the nation. In 1829, John Quincy Adams, having been soundly defeated, was an outgoing president whose actions, or lack thereof, as the leader of the collapsing Democratic-Republican Party's anti-Jackson faction, soon to be the National Republicans, continued to have negative fallout. Adams's failure to unite his supporters and his reputation for being an out-of-touch intellectual meant that his ambitious agenda for national improvement, the American system, which included a national university and federally funded infrastructure, was decisively rejected by the new Jacksonian majority. The negative consequence was a stagnation of national development projects and the repudiation of a vision for a strong, federally led economy. The actions of the political parties in 1829, specifically the final definitive split of the Democratic-Republican Party, had the negative consequence of intensifying sectionalism and partisan warfare. The two emerging parties, the Democrats and the National Republicans, were now sharply defined by their opposing views on federal power, tariffs, and Native American policy. This polarization was immediately evident, as the Tariff of 1828 had already created an economic crisis for the South. In 1829, Southern leaders intensified their opposition to the tariff, laying the political foundation for the nullification crisis of the early 1830s, an event that brought the Union to the brink of armed conflict over the issue of states' rights versus federal authority.